Hi guys, and welcome to the last session for workforce planning, the last resource support workshop. So this is the third version, the third resource support workshop. By the end of this session, you're going to have all the information that you need to successfully complete the last learning activity, which is implement initiatives to support workforce planning objectives. So I'll be taking through all of the questions and answers for that one. But particularly this section, we're starting to move into the area of teams, working with teams, some communication issues that you might find and discover with teams. I'm trying to also prepare you by the end of this session to attack the third assessment task. This information will actually directly relate to assessment task 3 as well as the third learning activity. And this is actually going to be our last resource support workshop, the third one. The next session I'll be taking you through the requirements, what you need to do to produce your assessment task 1, 2, and 3. But this session will take you through this learning activity, and as I say, I'm going to try and focus the material that relates mostly to the assessment task 3. So this one changes its sort of tactic, guess a little bit. We've been talking about workforce planning up until this point. So we've been talking about the workforce planning cycle, which, there we go. So profiling your workforce, working with the strategic direction of the business to forecast what the needs of the business are, understanding what the gaps are between where your workforce is right now and where you need it to be, and then developing strategies for diversity, just developing strategies for retention, attracting talent, and then implementing those strategies and so forth. We've been talking all about workforce planning as a whole. What we're going to talk a little bit today is about how to support some of these practices. We're going to talk a little bit about high-performing teams. We're going to talk a little bit about the dysfunctions of a team. In fact, we're going to focus on the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and the reason being is those 5 dysfunctions of a team is what you need to address in your third assessment task. So I thought I'll gear the information session more to what you're actually going to be producing at the end of it. So I'm going to go through some of these things quickly. The reason why I'm going to go through some of the things quickly about the team definition of a team. I'm going to get through some of the communication questions really quickly, and I'm also going to get through there's a question there about high-performing teams. I'll show you here. Okay, so these are the questions I'm going to take you through. I'm going to focus mostly on the third assessment task. So I'll get you through these questions really quickly. The reason why I'm going to do that is that we have a full subject. The next subject is actually called Ensure Team Effectiveness. The whole subject is about teams. I'm going to keep some of that information for then. We'll be unpacking that information again in a little bit more detail in that session, so I'm not going to spend too long on some of these items. Okay, so let's just roll through some of these questions in that regard. So let's have a look at the first one. In your own words, define the meaning of team. So in your own words, define the meaning of team, and what strategies have you used to help your team understand their purpose? Okay. So firstly, let's look at definitions. We always like to bring up definitions. I'm actually going to read some information straight off the learning materials. So if you go into your lessons and open up your learning materials here, I'm actually going to be reading information straight off that. Okay, so what is a team? And this is straight from your learning materials. The word team conveys different things to different people. Some people think of a sporting situation where personal bests and winning, no matter what, are important. Others consider teamwork, values such as sharing, cooperating, and helping one another as an essential to a team effort. Teams can be formed by as little as few as 2 people. Marriage is often referred to as a partnership or even a team. Here's the definition. This is the part that I'm going to be looking for in your answer. So the definition, actually this is straight from the learning materials still too. A small number of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, performance goals, and approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. Now I've highlighted those last 2 words because those last 2 words is all I'm really looking for. The definition of a team is mutual accountability. What mutual accountability means is that we as a group of people, a smaller number or a large number, we as a group or a team are accountable. So by accountable, you mean I'm held responsible for other people's actions, not just my own. To be a true team, we all have to be responsible for each other. That's what we mean by mutual accountability. So here's two examples of a team. One's a team, one's a group. Quite often in business, we refer to people as teams, whereas they actually are groups. There is a key difference between a team and a group, and that is what that mutual accountability is. So here's one, a football team, AFL football team, one, and a sales team. So a team of salesmen, okay? So which one of them is really a team? Which one of them is really a team? Well, the answer is the first one, the sporting team. And the reason why is on a football field, in a sporting game, in any sporting team, for example, there is mutual accountability for the simple fact that if I'm on the team and I make a mistake, that mistake is impacting other members of the team. That's what we mean by mutual accountability. My wins and my losses are impacted on the team. Now, a sales team, it's really more like a high performing group than a team. And the reason for that is that usually, and it's usual because I have seen sales teams that were teams. A sales team is usually a group because they have individual goals. They might they might act like a team in that they care for one another, they get to know one another, they are doing the same job at the same time, doing the same activities. They are pushing towards the same sort of result. However, they are compared individually. So if I have one member of the team that sold only 10 items this month and one other member who sold 50, the person who sold 50 is not impacted by the person who sold 10, and they're not going to be measured or anything based on the other person. Now, I have seen a sales team where it was a team, and the way they did it, they had 10 people on the team. It was actually a telecommunication sale. They were selling internet and phone packages, and they converted it into a group. They converted it from a group into a team, and their results went up dramatically. And the way they did that was they made a common goal. So instead of the sales guys having individual targets, I need to sell 5 internet packages or 5 telephones today. No, the group has to sell 50. So what happens in that situation is when somebody's having a bad day, that's actually going to fall now on my shoulders. It's up to me to make sure that I'm omnipresent. I'm aware of the things that are happening in my environment. I go out there and help out my other teammates because there's mutual accountability, and that's all I'm looking for. With that one is mutual accountability. The second part of the question is asking what strategies have you used to help your team understand their purposes? And well, for that, you can refer to some of the communication things that we're talking about next. I'll reflect on some of the ways that you've been made aware of the actual role or the responsibilities, the purpose of the actual team. Have a look at the materials for this one for a bit more info too. So it's likely to be answered in this next stage too. So question 2, what communication processes do you use within your organization, both formal and informal? So by communication process, what we're talking about is the communication method or the communication channel. So, this is the flow of information. It's what we call, what communication actually is the flow of information. How do we get that information over to you? So what we're talking about before, about what are the strategies to help your team understand, well, how are you going to communicate those strategies? What's the type of communication? What's the method of communication? What's the ways that you're going to communicate? So the two things that you should know that exist are there's formal and informal methods of communicating, and some are more appropriate for some activities, whereas the other one's more appropriate for another. So formal communication channels, so the methods of communicating in a formal setting might be a formal communication channel transmits organizational information such as goals, policies, and procedures. Messages in a formal communication channel follow a chain of command. This means that information flows from a manager to employee. Now, some of the examples of this formal communication could be a business plan, an annual report. It could be a newsletter. It could be employer manuals as well. So they are formal methods of communicating, but they're also formal ways of helping your team understand their purpose. Informal methods can be just as important. So an example of an informal communication could be having a quality circle, teamwork and lunch in the cafeteria of So teamwork and lunchtime in the cafeteria of an organization. So informal communications um, at the cafeteria or around in a relaxed atmosphere, basically, a bit more of an informal, relaxed atmosphere. So those informal communication channels fall outside of the formal ones, but they're really important in terms of providing somebody with feedback. I guess the one of the benefits of informal communication is that it's immediate. So usually with formal communication, you've got some methods like, having structured team meetings, having structured performance reviews, things like that, one-on-ones, those sorts of things. The informal is where you just walk over and have a bit of an informal chat, basically. But sometimes when you're providing feedback or helping somebody understand their role, their job, whatever it is, the informal stuff is just as important because it's immediate. It happens right now. If it's formal, then we have to organize a time to sit down together, organize some whatever you need to organize for the meeting. That's formal. It's not always appropriate when passing on info. Question 3, how do you communicate levels of authority to your employees in regards to decision making? How do you delegate responsibility? So don't worry about the word levels of authority for this question. So scratch that. Just how do you communicate to your employees in regards to decision making, and how do you delegate responsibilities? So what we're looking at here is just, I guess, tips and tricks for communicating. What are some ways to communicate, and how do you delegate responsibility? So what we mean by how do you delegate responsibilities, how do you, if you've got to give somebody a particular job to do, how do you pick the right person to do that job? Are you picking the person based on their age? Are you picking a person based on who turned up to work first that morning? Do you give the job to the person that has the most experience in that role? Do you give it to the least busy person? So you've got to tell me how you actually might delegate a particular job. But what we're wanting to know is also how do you communicate to your employees in regards to decision making? So what are the ways that you're actually going to communicate decisions, key decisions to your employees, and how do you delegate some of those responsibilities? So I'm just going to go through some communication bits. Actually, this is straight out of the learning materials under communication. There's some really cool things in here. So there's actually 10 reasons why people reject information that they hear, and I've got 10 communication principles that work. So here are some ideas for some good communication. Here are some ideas to help you avoid making some bad communication decisions. So 10 reasons why people reject what they hear. 1, they think that you're misleading them or they don't trust you. They think that you're misleading them or they don't trust you. Number 2, they're getting incomplete information. 3, they don't understand what you mean or your message is unclear. 4, you're being purposefully evasive with either good or bad intentions. So you're purposefully hiding something. 5, what you're saying seems inconsistent with what you're doing. You're acting one way but saying another thing. This is, again, the 10 reasons why people might reject information that they hear from you. So it's things to be careful in when you're communicating decisions or you're trying to delegate responsibilities. 6, they don't consider you credible. So you have no credits. Either you don't look the part or they don't like you at all. They think that you don't, this is number 7, they think you don't care about them personally. They don't feel a connection with you. It's quite an interesting one, that one. You're slow to communicate. They've heard it from somewhere else. That's number 8. Number 9, they think you're incompetent in your job because of weak communication skills. So if you're quite incompetent, there's not a lot of trust, there's not a lot of credit there in the bank, people are not going to take on board what you're saying. Last one, they're working in isolation with no opportunity for input or feedback. Okay, 10 communication principles at work. 1, communicate the truth. 2, explain your reasons behind decisions. This is a good one. When we're talking about communicating in relation to decision making, explain the reasons behind your decisions. These work. People need to know the backstory. We're intelligent beings. We need to know reasons for some of these decisions. 3, don't hide behind technology. 4, frame negative views positively when you can do so honestly. So as long as you're keeping it honest and authentic, try and frame negative views in a positive way. Keep it jargon free. So keep it short of all of the, bits of jargon, so keep the language that you're using nice and clean and clear. Number 6, communicate like you brush your teeth regularly, I would hope. Number 7, show your humanity, keep it real. Number 8, listen like you care. If you're going to listen, at least pretend to be interested. Number 9, stay open-minded. Number 10, adapt your style to the person, really important too. So when you're speaking to a particular group of people, adapt to that particular cohort, if you like. So if I'm delivering a message to a group of CEOs, I might deliver it in a different way to if I'm doing it for a bunch of my sales team, young and energetic and so forth. I might adapt my communication style for the group. So any of these communication ideas, communication faux pas, anything like that, if you want to refer to some of these in answering this question, I'm absolutely keen on that. Number 4, describe 4 attributes of high-performing teams. I'm going to read stuff straight out of the learning material. There's actually a list of 20 attributes of high-performing teams. I'm just going to read them out. Have a look at the learning materials for this one, guys, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time on the dysfunctions of a team, as I said earlier. Okay, so here's 20 attributes of a high-performing team. First attribute, purpose. The team has a set of clear goals agreed to by all team members. 2, role clarity. Each team member has clear roles and knows the others' roles well as well. 3 is learning. Is an attribute of a high-performing team. Team members learn from their experiences and build an environment based around continually asking the question, how can we do it better? 4, participation. Team members feel listened to. All contributions are valued. 5, recognition. The team recognizes and celebrates performance in a range of ways. 6, communication. There is regular two-way communication. People express themselves openly, honestly, and clearly with others. 7, measurement. The team member measures and evaluates how they are performing. Team to team. The team relates effectively with other team members in their company. Number 9, leadership. A leader uses the contributions from all team members. So it's got to have some leadership. You've got to take on board contributions from all members. Number 10, trust. Team members are genuine with each other. There's no second guessing. Team members accept feedback, don't hold grudges, and they're willing to ask for help. Diversity. Differences between team members are understood. They're valued and respected. Team accountability is the 12th one here. Everyone takes responsibility for maintaining the standards and keeping people focused. Follow through. It's number 13. The team commits to following through with agreed plans. Number 14. Responsible team players. Team members take responsibility for the health of the team, generating new ideas and learning new skills. This is just not left alone for the manager only. Number 15, procedures. There are effective procedures and processes within the team to guide them functioning. 16, passionate debate of ideas. The team has lively and interesting meetings where team members do not agree for the sake of it. So having passionate debate is actually an attribute of a high-performing team. Humor. Laughter and playfulness is great for team cohesion. 18, attention to results. Team members suppress their individual needs, the ego, career development for the interests and goals of the team. Innovation. The team creates an environment for people to generate new ideas. And last one, commitment to the group plan. The team work through their own opinions and move forward together without hesitation. So they're straight out of your learning materials, guys. Really good information there. Okay, so last question here before we talk about the team dysfunctions. In your own words, explain how you would use a team meeting to focus on solutions to issues or problems that may have been raised by employees. Okay, this is straight out of the materials again. There's a subsection there called making your team meetings effective. So team meetings need to be clear and have a transparent and genuine purpose and useful outcomes. It's really important to have that purpose to your meeting. So an effective team meeting should be inclusive, i.e. everybody gets to contribute, participate, it needs to be planned, it needs to have an agreed agenda or an agreed outcome or purpose. So this is what we're trying to achieve. It might not be much of an agenda because it might be a brainstorming session. The idea might be there to problem solve, and so it's hard to have an agenda. It's going to be a bit of a creative one, but the key is to have an outcome or purpose. That is What is it that you want to achieve from that meeting? So it's also, it's always good to be planned and to have things run really slick and really well, but you should also allow for informal feedback. So things may crop up in the meeting that need to be dealt with. You've got to be able to be a little bit flexible and be able to deal with that at the same time. So there's just a few ideas there on that last one. There's a point here, have clear objectives and an action plan for how you'll reach those objectives. Okay, so at the end of the day, make sure that you don't just organise team meetings for the sake of having a meeting. They must be productive and have a genuine outcome, or staff will actually start feeling like it's a waste of time, it's not important, not valuable, you'll get less input from staff at the same time. So yeah, go into the materials for that one. Okay, so let's step it back. Now back to workforce planning. I'm going to be talking now about 5 dysfunctions of a team. This is information that will actually help you with your third assessment task in this subject. So now I'm actually just going to pick it up straight from the learning materials again. So team, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Okay, so it's argued that there are 5 actual dysfunctions that exist or can exist. Roadblocks, potential dysfunctions, we're calling dysfunctions roadblocks. Potential roadblocks, dysfunctions that lead essentially to poor performance in any given team. In theory, teamwork is simple. Most of us already know what's required, but in practice, teamwork is actually quite difficult. We just read through 20 attributes of high performing. There's a lot going on there. For a team to really be slick and performing well, there's a lot of things that have to be happening, that have to be going right. For a team to be truly effective, it must overcome the 5 dysfunctions as outlined by actually Patrick Leoncioni. He wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So this is information that's come from the 2002 book from Patrick Leoncioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Let's talk about the first one. The first dysfunction or roadblock to teamwork is the absence of trust. So absence of trust, this occurs when team members are reluctant to be vulnerable with one another and are unwilling to admit to their mistakes. They're unwilling to admit to their weaknesses. They're unwilling to ask for help. Without a certain comfort level amongst team members, a foundation of trust is impossible. So the first dysfunction here is an absence of trust. It's a really interesting one. Unwilling to admit to your mistakes and your weaknesses, unwilling to ask for help. So members, if you're looking to identify, and what you're going to be doing in your third assignment is to do an analysis on either a current team or a previous team of yours, and you're going to be actually analyzing these 5 elements to determine if they actually exist and to what level they exist, and then at the end of that you're going to be doing a bit of a summary to maybe some suggestions on how to actually fix some of these issues. But the first one, absence of trust, how does that actually manifest? Well, members of teams with an absence of trust tend to, as I mentioned, they conceal their weaknesses. They're unwilling to admit to their mistakes, hesitate to offer help outside of their own areas of responsibility. They also might jump to conclusions about the intentions or aptitudes of others without attempting to clarify them. They tend to hold grudges against other people. They fail to recognize and tap into one another's skills and experience. So they don't pump up other people's tires up or compliment others either as well. Interestingly enough, they dread meetings. They try and avoid to spend time together with one another. So when there's an absence of trust, these are the things that we see. Let's have a look at the second dysfunction. Dysfunction number 2 is fear of conflict. So teams that are lacking in trust are incapable of engaging in unfiltered and passionate debate about key issues. It's really true. Causing situations where team conflict can turn into veiled discussions and back-channel comments. In a work setting where team members do not openly air their opinions, inferior decisions are the results. Teams that fear conflict tend to have really boring meetings. So one way to identify that dysfunction is that, yeah, the meetings are quite boring. People are very cautious. They're not willing to actually engage in that setting. Um, Tend to create environments where what we call back channel politics and personal attacks tend to thrive. So where people fear conflict, there's a lot of that sort of chitter chatter that happens in the background. Tend to ignore controversial topics as well that are critical to team success. So something that might be really important for the team to address, deal with, a process is not working. If it's controversial or if it's likely to upset, offend, or whatnot, it's usually ignored. So if a team is experiencing that dysfunction, fear of conflict, that's one way that it manifests. They also tend to waste time and energy um, with posturing and interpersonal risk management. They do things that, to protect themselves, basically, um, which is essentially a waste of time and so forth. We'll come back to some strategy after, but let's have a look at the third one, dysfunction number 3, lack of commitment. Without conflict, it is difficult for team members to commit to decisions, creating an environment where ambiguity prevails. Lack of direction and commitment can make employees, particularly star employees, disgruntled. Okay, so a team that fails to commit, so this is the third dysfunction, lack of commitment. A team that fails to commit creates ambiguity amongst the team about directions and priorities. Watches windows of opportunity close due to excessive analysis and unnecessary delay, breeds lack of confidence and fear of failure, uh, revisits discussions and decisions again and again and again. So a team that is showing this dysfunction will tend to go over the same discussion and decision again and again and again without fully being able to commit to it. It also encourages a lot of second guessing amongst team members. So that's one way to identify that third dysfunction. Fourth dysfunction, avoidance of accountability. We know that a team must be mutually accountable. So the fourth dysfunction of the team, where teams do not commit to a clear plan of action, even the most focused and driven individuals hesitate to call their peers on actions and behaviors that may seem counterproductive to the overall good of the team. A team that avoids accountability tends to encourage mediocrity, believe it or not. A team that avoids accountability tends to miss deadlines and key deliverables. A team that avoids accountability creates resentment amongst team members who have different standards of performance. A team that avoids accountability places an undue burden on the team leader as the sole source of discipline. It doesn't always have to be the team leader. You can always have a situation where somebody is quite a driver or trying to drive a lot of the directions of a team. A team that avoids accountability might just put that work to that person who tends to just do a lot of work. Just give it to that person. So that's the fourth one. Fifth dysfunction in the set here, inattention to results. So team members naturally tend to put their own needs, their ego, career development, recognition first, ahead of the collective goal of the team, when individuals aren't held accountable. So if a team has lost sight of the need for achievement, the business ultimately suffers. A team that is not focused on the results stagnates, it doesn't grow, it rarely defeats its competitors, it's easily distracted by other things. It loses its achievement-oriented employees. There's some employees that are focused on achieving, and you're going to discourage those employees from being a part of your organization. And it does actually encourage the opposite, encourages team members to focus on their own career, it encourages them to focus on their own goals and so forth. So there are some strategies that you can employ to deal with these dysfunctions. And some of the strategies that you might include, so for the first one, absence of trust. Foundation of trust needs to be built on mutual understanding and appreciation of each other's differences. So organizations can try and facilitate or achieve this by facilitating team meetings, events, opportunities to work alongside each other harmoniously. So try and set people up for success. Try and set people up to do a good job. So the second one, fear of conflict. The strategy to overcome this might be, if there is a fear of conflict, team members may opt to say nothing in favor of talking behind closed doors. To combat this, team leaders need to outline expectations and create open lines of communication. This may mean holding brainstorming sessions to facilitate discussions. Okay. The third one, lack of commitment. Ensuring that team members are clear about their roles and responsibilities as well as policies, procedures that they must follow. That's a strategy to overcome the third one. The fourth one, avoidance of accountability. Once the team accountabilities are expressed and communicated via the performance plan, there must be clear consequences of not delivering on desired performance levels. So if you avoid your accountability, if you avoid the team's avoiding that, there's got to be a clear outline communicated. It's a strategy. So this is a strategy, clearly communicate and outline what's expected. Inattention of results, the last one, if the team has lost sight of the need for achievement, organizational goals suffer. We could see that. The team members need to understand how their role meets the overall goal of the team. It's actually a key item in business in general. Teams need to know how they fit in with the bigger picture. It's actually part of human motivation as well, understanding that you as a human being are part of a bigger, wider, more important picture. If your job or your role contributes to a much wider meaning, then that actually helps to get motivation for the long term. So team leaders need to ensure that each team member is putting the team goal in and ahead of their own. So that's basically what I want to talk about. That information is going to be relating to the third assessment task, 5 dysfunctions of team. You'll be doing a bit of an assessment on your own team or a team that you've been previously working with, just assessing each of those 5 items and just trying to make an assessment where the team sits in and against those 5 dysfunctions, and then coming up with a simple strategy for overcoming those. Now that ends this session. This is just the third resource support session for workforce planning. The next session will be dedicated to the 3 assessment tasks. Hope you've got something out of today's session. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you in the next session. All the best. Thanks, guys.